Hello friends, my name is Shivam from DevOps Schools and I will help you to enable your learning process in various technologies of DevOps, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data and many more. This is our initiative to help you by sharing multiple tutorials and videos. And if you want any specific tutorials or any particular topic, then please do comment in the below comment section and I will help you with it. Also, please subscribe to our premium services on YouTube, which will give you access to more content and videos to enhance your knowledge about all these topics. Also, if you want me to help you with regards to the online trainings and classroom sessions by our qualified trainers, then please do write me at contact@devopsschool.com.
And it says service is loaded but inactive. So what shall we do to start this service? Any idea? Any suggestions? How can we start it?
System tutorial start HTTPD.
Yep. So we started, and here we see now, if we see the status, it is active and running, right? And you can see here that HTTPD server is now installed. Yep. So this is how you can install on CentOS or on Red Hat Linux. Okay. And again, installation directory etc httpd. Here is where you will find your httpd server details. Now the directories are a bit different here. I see you see Apache 2 had a different directory structure. You have apache2.conf and all that stuff, but here you don't. Okay. Now where is all the configuration files? Let's take a look at that. Let's open the service configuration. Right, the service is stored in user lib systemd system httpd.service. Let's take a look at the service. Vim is not installed. Okay. And this is our service file, right? User bin httpd is the binary that manages httpd server on CentOS. So on Apache 2, the binary which maintains or manages the server is Apache2ctl. On CentOS, it is user bin httpd. Right? All right. We can also see the httpd process. So we have this. Okay. Yep. So here is where it is installed, and we have conf, and inside conf we have httpd.conf, right? And this is the default configuration for our httpd server. So it has similar configuration, but in CentOS you have a bit different layout of the configuration file, right? For example, you have server root definition here itself, right? You have include to include all the configuration modules, but the directory names are different, right? There are no environment variables here. So everything is hard coded in the configuration directory. So there are subtle differences here and there. You also have document root, right? So subtle differences here and there, but the way of working is same, right? For example, you see here error log is defined here, but in Apache 2 configuration, the error logs were defined under the some environment variable defined directory / error.log, right? And that those environment variables were defined here. So the configuration and the directory structure differs a little bit between your CentOS and and Ubuntu, but at the end, the way of it working is same. Question: does httpd.conf contain NVVars? No, so there are no environment variables here in HTTPD, right? It's all hard coded. So you can see here, for example, if I open this apache.conf, let's go to the top of the page. Yeah, for example, this PID file, this comes from an environment variable, right? And that is in envvars. Now, if I go and check the httpd.conf on CentOS, there could be some PID file directive here. Let's look for it. Okay, so there is no specific configuration for PID file here. So it's taking the default, but yeah, it's coming from there, right? So it will be hard coded somewhere. For example, we can see this user, right? Which user will be running this server? So the default user is Apache and group is Apache. But if you go to your Apache conf, you see user and group is coming from the environment variables, right? So in HTTPD on CentOS, it's all defined in the conf file. In Ubuntu, it is all defined in the environment variables. All right. Okay, so I'll keep this CentOS window also open for some references. All right, so our server is installed. Now we saw, if I see that in apache2.conf, many folders are included. So it says include mods enabled star.load, include mods enabled star.conf. Similarly, include ports.conf, include conf enabled star.conf, site enabled star.conf, right? So let's see what is it including from there. So first thing is ports.conf. So if I open ports.conf, you see that here we define which port should our HTTP server listen on, right? So if you come back to this diagram here, when we connect to a server, when a client connects to a server, it should know the details on how to connect to this server, right? So it should know the IP address of the server, and it should know on which port to connect, right? So whenever you browse to a website, the syntax is like this: http :/ the server address :port. Now the default port, if you don't specify this, the default port is 80. So if you're on your web server, the website is available on port 80, then you don't need to specify it. By default, the browser will look at port 80, right? And if it is an HTTPS, then 443. So these are the default ports. So when you install this Apache 2 server, it listens to the default port, which is port 80 and 443, right? And that is why when you go to your browser and you hit the IP address, by default, it takes you to the port 80, right? Here you can see it's on port 80. Okay. All right. Now, if we want our server to listen to some other ports, we can add that as well. So maybe we can take a look later how we can add our own server or our own port or change this port maybe. All right. So we will come back to this later. So this is our ports.conf. Now let's take a look at conf enabled star.conf. Okay. So I'll say conf enabled, and inside this there are a lot of configurations which are included. So let's go to this directory, conf enabled, and there is carset.conf, there is localized error pages, other vhosts, blah 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 blah. So these are some configurations which are specific to certain category of configuration. For example, your security related configurations will be in security.conf. Your localization or your how your characters are displayed, such configurations will be in carset.conf. So if I open or if I print the security.conf, you can say trace enable is off, right? So you don't want to display your system trace on any error pages. Server signature is on, so that means you will see information about the server when you get some error pages, right? So some configurations, security configurations, if they are like, if you have to enable or disable them. So all these configurations will also be loaded into the memory. So apache2.conf will be loaded, and then it says, okay, include these files also. So these configurations also will be loaded in the memory. We can also take out these configurations from this file, put it in apache2.conf, and get rid of this file completely. That also will be fine, right? But here we have put the configurations in separate files for ease of access, ease of understanding, right? Similarly, you have, for example, what should we take a look at? Like maybe localized error pages, how the error pages will be displayed. So you can see error will be displayed like this, right? So error document is, if error is 400, then this error document should be displayed, right? So all these error files are stored in this folder, user share Apache 2 error, right? So if a client comes and hits your server and then looks for a web page which does not exist, then it will display 404, right? This server is not found. If authentication is required and if it is client is not authenticated, then it says unauthorized or forbidden, right? Some sort of error statements like this. So these web pages will be returned. Okay, so these are the configuration defined here. So many other configurations are defined. In your spare time, you can go and take a look. Now, there is also, we'll come back to sites enabled later. There is also mods enabled, right? Let's go to mods enabled. And in the mods enabled, you have lot of modules which are enabled, right? Some configurations of these modules. Now, what are modules? Modules are kind of plugins for your web server, right? If you want to add support for PHP, if you want to add support for some other server side scripting like Python, for authentication module, for timeouts and all that, you can install various modules. Okay, those are set up here. For example, I'll just take you through let's say which one, for example, dir.conf. I say dir.conf. In this, what happens is that this module, mod underscore dir, is going to define, this module defines which file to display whenever a browser connects to the server. So by default, when I go to this URL or go to this web server, this file is displayed, right? Where is this file coming from? Now this file is coming from a directory. We'll see where that directory is defined, but inside that directory, there is the default file here. There can be 100 HTML files inside a directory. Which one to display here? So that is identified in the directory index configuration. So you can see it look for index.html. So if an index.html file is present, it will be displayed. If that is not present, then it will look for index.cgi. That will be displayed. If that is also not present, then it will look for index.pl. Then it look for index.php, then index.xhtml, then index.htm. Right? So this is a priority of which file to be displayed by default. Okay. Now, this is, we will come back to this for one of our examples. We'll come back to this. Now, let's go back to sites.enabled. There is something called sites.enabled. Let's say vim, or let's go cd sites.enabled -enabled. And there is a default configuration here. Let's open it. And this is very interesting here. Now it says which sites or which web servers are we hosting on this machine. Okay, so right now there is this web server called all these servers are called virtual hosts. So there is a physical host or this physical machine, and on top of that you have your virtual host here. So virtual hosts are various servers which you can create on your machine. So default is a virtual host which is created on port 80, which we see when we browse to this server, right? So any request coming on any port of this machine, sorry, any IP address or any network interface of this machine and coming on port 80 should be served with this data, right? Interesting thing is that document root is var www html. That means if anyone tries to browse to this machine on port 80, serve them the web pages stored in var www html. And inside var www html, it will look for index.html, then index.cgi, then index.perl, then index.php, yeah? Whatever file is available. So this is the default document root. That's what this directive does. It's the default document root. And if we go to var www html, here is our index.html, right? And this is the same index.html which is displayed here. Okay, let's have some fun and let's change this index.html. So I'm going to rename index.html as index.html underscore backup and create our own index.html, right? And I say hello DevOps school. Done. I changed the index.html file. Now if I hit this web page, what do I get? Hello DevOps school. So this is the default web page being presented to you guys or to anyone who browses this server, right? And that all is configured in the sites enabled configuration. right? Okay, questions? If we have more than one site configured, all of them can be active at the same time. With the same port? No, 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 no. You cannot have multiple servers running on the same port, right? For one port, if we go back to /etc Apache 2 sites enabled, yeah, and open the configuration, on one port you can have only one document root, but inside this you can have multiple HTML pages, right? By default it will show the index.html, but you can have about.html or info.html, and you can browse those. For example, we can say vim var www.html and help.html. You can create multiple web pages here. I can maybe put the entire HTML tag here and say body. Yeah. And say, hello there. This is the help page. So we have help.html. And if I go to this and say help.html, I should see the help page. So you can serve multiple documents on a server, but you cannot serve multiple servers on a single port. This answers your question? Okay. Any more questions? Yes.
How can we enable this the Apache service that we run manually when this system boot happens? How can we automatically start it?
Okay. So okay, systemctl enable. Right, systemctl enable is the command. Okay, not much documentation here, but it enables the service to start post boot. Okay, so maybe I'll show you here. See, so systemctl enable will hook the specified unit blah 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 so that it will automatically start on boot. Okay, so you can say systemctl enable Apache 2. Right, and this will enable your service to start whenever the server is restarted.
Okay.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
also in the previous days there was also a command called check config. It's not available anymore, so you can do it with systemctl. Maybe on CentOS it is available. Check config, yeah. So on here in CentOS you have check config, right? And you can say check config enable something like this. But systemctl is a central place now to manage your services, so systemctl enable should do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Can this be done by a virtual host? Boris says, so can what? Multiple servers? from virtual host? Yes, definitely. So we will do that, but on different ports, right? On same port, we cannot have multiple servers. What is sites enabled function? Okay, so it's not a function, it's a directory which contains your other configuration. And with this naming convention, we are putting here the server configuration. So when something hits on port 80, what should be served to the client? And that's what defined in this configuration. So we can take this configuration and put it in the main apache.conf and it should work fine, right? But it's just a decoupling of configuration and put here. So we will come back after the break. We'll take a break now. We come back after the break and set up our own web server. Okay. Any more questions? All right, one more thing. So you can see here that apart from sites enabled, there is also sites available. Sites available. Inside this, there are some configurations available, which if you want, you can put it in sites enabled. So sites available directory is not imported in apache2.conf. There is no include statement for that, right? So if you want it to be included, you have to specify this configuration in the sites enabled. So you can take this configuration and put it in the sites enabled. So already if I see in the sites enabled, there is this configuration, which is nothing but a symlink to the sites available /000-default. So this is the default configuration. There is default SSL configuration also. So if you want to set up SSL certificates or secure website, you can do that as well. Okay, similarly, mods available, conf available contains some available configurations which you can choose to enable by symlinking to them from conf enabled. Right, for example, conf available. And well, actually, these are the configurations which are already symlinked from conf enabled. But yeah, you can have a lot more like mods available. Hopefully, mods available has a lot more mods. So there are a lot of mods here, SSL load or SSL conf, which are I think not imported yet. Okay, so this available is a list of available configurations, but to enable them, you have to symlink to these configurations from your enabled folder. Okay. All right, so let's take a break. And from the break, we come back and we take a look at how do we change some configurations and how do we add a more web server. And we will also create one PHP website and use it here. Okay, and that's all for the session today.
Thanks for watching. Want to study further? Join our training programs today.